All right, let's talk cybersecurity, but not the kind that protects your email. We're talking about the systems that protect a power grid. It's a completely different ballgame. Today, we're diving into the high-stakes world of industrial control systems, or ICS, and you're going to see why securing a factory is, well, it's nothing like securing an office. So, right off the bat, you have to understand that the goals here are just completely different. I mean, they're worlds apart. Your typical IT security, that's all about protecting data. Your personal info, company secrets, confidentiality and integrity are king. But in the industrial world, nope. The absolute #1 priority is protecting the physical process. It's all about keeping that factory running, keeping the lights on, availability, and, most importantly, safety. That's the name of the game. Okay, so let's dig into that a little deeper. Why is protecting that physical process such a non-negotiable #1 priority? What's really at stake?
Well, the consequences are just massive. Think about an oil refinery. If, say, an email server goes down, it's a pain, for sure, but it's an inconvenience. But if the actual refining process stops, you can't just hit Control-Alt-Delete. We're talking about a system so complex, it could take a whole month just to get it going again.
And a month of downtime isn't just some headache for the engineering team. It's a full-blown financial catastrophe. Losing a month means you've lost something like 8% of your entire yearly revenue. And think bigger. On a national scale, that could mean a huge chunk of a country's fuel supply just vanishes. So yeah, these shutdowns have massive financial and national security implications.
And it's not just about money, not by a long shot. An IT breach, what's the worst that happens to you? Maybe a fraudulent charge on your credit card, annoying but fixable? An ICS failure? That can literally be life-threatening. These are the systems controlling, volatile chemical plants or the power grid. When these things go wrong, the consequences can be absolutely devastating.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the tech itself. Because the way these systems talk to each other inside a plant, it's nothing like your typical office network. This is where things get really, really different.
So the IT world, right? It pretty much runs on one universal standard, TCP/IP. Easy. But the industrial world? It's like the digital Wild West. There are over 200 different protocols out there, and a lot of them are proprietary, which means they're basically secret languages that only one manufacturer's equipment speaks. So if you're trying to defend or attack these systems, you have to be fluent in this huge, messy library of languages.
And a lot of this goes back to the history of these protocols. Things like Profibus and Profinet, they were designed decades ago. They were built for one thing: reliability over old, slow serial connections. Security wasn't even on the radar. They had to be super simple and lightweight, so security features, they just weren't baked in. It means that if an attacker gets onto that internal network, they're going to find that a lot of the digital doors are just unlocked.
But out of all that chaos, one protocol kind of rose to the top as a universal translator. And that's Modbus. It's one of the oldest and most common ones you'll find. See, because all these companies have their own secret languages, they needed a common tongue so their machines could talk to each other. So they'd often just stick a Modbus port on their gear. This makes Modbus a huge deal and a major focus for anybody working in ICS security.
All right, now for what might be one of the biggest headaches in the entire field of ICS security. This is probably one of the most glaring differences with IT. You can't just patch things. Think about it. In IT, what's rule #1? A new vulnerability pops up, a patch comes out, and you install it. Right away. A reboot might be annoying, but you do it. In the ICS world, you just can't do that. A reboot isn't just restarting a computer. It's shutting down an entire factory. It's just not an option.
And this is the painful reality of it. You might find a really critical vulnerability in, say, January. The patch comes out in February. But the next scheduled maintenance for the plant isn't until July. So for 6 months, that system just sits there completely exposed because that's the only window they have to safely take it down and apply the patch.
And sometimes patching isn't just delayed, it's impossible. Get this, here's a true story. A hospital was running a supercritical system on Windows 95. Yeah, Windows 95. And why? Because the special software it needed was written for that OS, and the company that wrote the software went bust years ago. There was no update. They literally couldn't upgrade the OS without turning the machine into a brick. And these kinds of legacy systems are everywhere in the industrial world.
Okay, and for our final point, let's talk about the physical environment itself.
because the sheer scale, the distance, and the danger involved create security problems that most IT folks, well, they just never have to deal with.
An IT admin's world is usually a server room, right? They can physically touch pretty much every piece of equipment. An ICS engineer, on the other hand, might be responsible for a pipeline that stretches for thousands of kilometers. You've got pumping stations, electrical substations, all these remote, scattered, and often unmanned buildings. This makes physical security not only incredibly hard, but also absolutely critical.
And that remoteness is a massive vulnerability. An attacker doesn't need to pull off some Hollywood-style heist on the main control center. Nope. All they have to do is find one of those unmanned pumping stations out in the middle of nowhere, break in, and connect their laptop to the local equipment. From there, they can start sending false data back to the main server and potentially compromise the entire network from its weakest, most remote link.
And as if that wasn't enough, the environment itself is just hostile to electronics. You've got these massive motors in industrial plants, and they're throwing off huge fields of electromagnetic interference, or EMI. It's basically electrical noise that can mess up communications. This means they have to use all this special, heavily shielded wiring. It's just another layer of complexity you are never going to see in a typical office building.
So here's the bottom line. IT security is all about protecting data in a modern, pretty standardized world. ICS security is about protecting physical processes with technology that's often old, incredibly diverse, and spread out over huge distances, all in an environment where safety is the only thing that matters. And that leaves us with a really big question, doesn't it? Our modern lives depend completely on these invisible systems running on decades-old tech. So just how secure are they, really?
If you found this deep dive into our hidden infrastructure insightful, do us a favor and hit that subscribe and like button. It really does help us create more content just like this. Thanks for watching.